Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Frances Schefter, Principal of Schefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.schefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Frances Schefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's guest is Pamela Newman with PRN Counseling. And PRN Counseling offers customized mental health therapy for services for ages 8 to 98. And it's a boutique psychotherapy practice that has been serving individuals, families, and couples in the DMV area since 2012, bringing more harmony and peace of mind, which I know for all of us is like, wow, harmony and peace of mind. What's that? So Pam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And tell us a little bit more about like how PRN counseling came about and like, what do you mean by customized mental health therapy?
So PRN counseling, I started my practice in 2012 in the DMV. We're in Montgomery County, and customized meaning, I think a lot of therapists come in and they only want to treat clients one way. And in knowing that we see a lot of kids with special needs, ADHD, learning differences, it's going to be different for every family, for every client. And we are very flexible. We're not rigid in terms of we have to use this modality. We have to do it this way. There's only one way to go about this. It all kind of comes piecemeal based on what each family, each person needs. So that's why customized. We like to be flexible. We like to adapt based on the client.
Which makes sense because it's all, I talk about it all the time with the family, like one person doing therapy. While that's great, the individual, if the dynamics at home, either the spouses, the parents, or with the children and all of that, one person therapy will help, but you need to look at the whole picture and everybody, right?
Exactly. I've had so many parents come to me and say, I have no idea what my kid's doing in therapy. They've been in therapy for a year and a half. I have no idea what they're working on. I have no idea what they're doing. I don't get it. Right. So we very much integrate parents into the therapy. I try and check in with the parents every session. I try and make sure they know what's going on, because I'll have a kid sit in my office for an hour and I'll say, what's going on? And they're like, nothing. And then the parent comes in and they're like, we had a huge fight last week and blah, 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 blah. And, unless I know what's happening, I can't be working on that thing. So it's good for me to have all the pieces of the puzzle. And in interacting with parents, I have more information, and that helps me work with the kid more effectively.
Right. I know that's so important because I know like with my daughters and their therapists, we do check, parent check-ins whenever I request them, that we talk about, and that I know I don't need to know the details and the secrets and whatever, I want my daughter to feel confident that she can talk openly and not fear getting back to me. But I need to know the basics of like, what are you working on? How are you helping? Because those are things that we now want to connect with the school and other service providers so that we're all working on the same things together, and the kids aren't getting mixed messages.
Yes. And I'm always trying to work with parents to give strategies in terms of, hey, here are some things that you could be doing at home that might be effective. But also I am working with the team at the school. I'm talking to school counselors. I'm talking to psychiatrists. I'm talking to MDs. I'm talking to speech pathologists, executive functioning coaches. I try and communicate with everyone because it needs to be an effective partnership.
Right. And that's the building the community that I talk about so often. It's like, we need it. Parenting is hard. We all say it. Parenting, all kids are hard. And then add neurodiversity and then add more than one child with or without, just it just gets even harder and harder and
Yeah.
harder.
Yeah.
And it can be such a challenge. And so I
Yeah.
know you said you work with schools. Like, do you help parents to be able to get, like, do you make recommendations for what the schools should do on the
Sure.
IEPs?
Sure. So for a lot of kids, if they have anxiety or depression, it's impacting their ability to access the curriculum. I have written notes for 504 plans, given ideas for, IEP 504 related goals, things like that. So, I want to figure out how the kid can be more successful in school.
Right. Because that's like so important. And it's so,
Yeah.
I know for me, especially in this era, you see all the kids, and I talk about this all the time, the bumper stickers that, my kid's on honor roll. And I'm like, I want a sticker that says, my kid's well adjusted.
For sure. For sure. My kid sees a therapist.
Right. Right. Because I mean, it's true. Like, yes, academics matters, but if your child's not mentally healthy and, not saying that you can't have both, but like, it's just, I'd rather my child be getting C's and feel confident in what they're doing and knowing they're doing their best to and have that self-awareness that they're doing the best that they can. And this is just where their strengths or weaknesses are, than to be getting straight A's because that's what's expected of them.
Right. Absolutely. And, you want a kid that doesn't wake up every morning and say, I hate school. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to be there. They're kicking and screaming. They're, and at some point they're too big for you to pick up and say, like, get in the car.
Right.
You want a kid that feels okay going to school. They're not going to love going to school every day, but,
Although some do.
Yes, some do. That's true. Like, my kids love school, luckily, thank goodness, but they're still in elementary school. But,
I have 1 and 1.
So but, I have parents of teenagers coming in saying, my kid absolutely refuses to go to school. We don't want that.
Right. Right. And then that's when you help dig into like, why and what
Right.
can we put in place? Because, I know that's a fear, especially like kids with, parents that have kids on the spectrum, especially the PDA profile that's been talked about a lot, the autistic burnout that's real because these kids are masking so much and they just finally get to the point of, I'm done and I can't.
Right. And how much of that is, their fight or flight response or their freeze response saying, if their brain starts to see school as a threat, that's a major issue. And we need them to be able to go in the school building, be calm, and be able to, engage in their education and be present.
Right. So with our older kids, like when do you think it's appropriate for them to like come into the IEP meetings and advocate for what they want?
It depends on the kid. I mean, some kids, well, first of all, I think it's good for kids to just even sit there and know what an IEP meeting is. I've done a lot of prep work for kids in terms of, what to say at an IEP meeting, when to chime in, when to advocate for yourself. But just listening and being a part of that adult meeting, I think is good preparation for life, and good to have that exposure. But, if the kid's going to have an anxiety attack and, you've got to think about the comfort level. You've got to think about the maturity, the emotional maturity, where they are. But, it could be, a 10 or 11-year-old could be fine sitting there in an IEP meeting and answering questions. It really just depends on the kid. But I think giving them the option, telling them what's going on, because it's a room of adults talking about them and they want to know.
That's anxiety itself.
What are you saying about me? And, kids have a lot more insight than we give them credit for. They really do. So it's a it depends answer, but
Right. That's the
I
lawyer
err on
answer.
the side of invite them, have them sit there for 10 minutes, see how they do. If they seem super uncomfortable, then, they don't have to stay, but give them the option.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the approach I take often. Like, I have clients ask me, and I'm like, you guys know your kids best and where they would be. I've had kids sit through the entire IEP meeting and they're great. I've had kids that had intended on sitting through, but like within a half an hour, they're like, I'm done, I'm out.
Boring.
I know, right? Like, I don't blame them. But then I also have kids that we just call it, like, we go through the present level stuff because that can be hard for some kids to hear
Yeah.
of like their strengths and weaknesses, especially sometimes schools tend to talk about weaknesses more than the strengths.
Sure.
But then come in and like talk about accommodations and what they think works for them and what they need. Because when we take that step back and ask the kids, sometimes it's amazing what comes out of their mouths,
Absolutely. Oh, completely.
I never even thought of that, or I didn't realize that was something that would help you, but they know. Like, I know with my daughter who's only 10, like, she's so intuitive of what she needs and when she needs it, and is, like, she'll get to a point that she can't talk and will growl, but we now have a flash pass that she can put on her desk when she's at that point.
Right.
So she doesn't have to be verbal. She just puts it on her desk and she goes to her safe person, or, goes to her little tight corner that she needs to go into to regulate, and then it's fine.
Sure.
But that's where like the greatness of the IEP is helpful and individualized for what does your child need when and how.
Right.
And knowing to be able to give that input. And it's interesting, I never even thought about having a therapist prepare the child for the IEP meeting.
Oh, all the time.
I don't know why I never even thought about that, but that makes so much sense.
Well, they don't know what to expect. They might not know what to say. They might not know what to anticipate. It's a long meeting of people talking about them. And to be prepared for hearing those challenges, those weaknesses, I don't like to say weaknesses, but challenges, the areas that are more difficult for them, to be able to look, most kids know what their challenges are. They just do. But to be able to hear other people saying that and know, like, that's okay. Right. I can sit here, I can listen to it. I don't need to, act out and storm out of the room and say, that's not true. To be able to just tolerate hearing that and know that it's not something that's bad. It's just an area to work on. But also to be able to identify their own strengths, because most kids can't.
Yeah.
So, but to emotionally prepare for that meeting, I think, is really critical.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense because it's also, it's overwhelming. I hate like disability codes and that it's, something wrong with you and stuff. And the way special ed is now, I mean, it's a lot better than it was, but it still makes kids feel like I'm broken, something's wrong, and an IEP is going to fix me. And that's not what it is,
Right.
And that's why, like, I always encourage parents to talk to their kids about, like, look, I go to a therapist also, or I hired, the law firm, or I hired this advocate to come to the IEP meeting because you know what, I need help and support, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's going to know everything. And unfortunately, the school system, these are the common core that you have to know and have to learn. And if you're not, then you're not getting the good grades. And what does that mean? Well, you know what? It doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means you're not good at that subject. So what?
Right.
Okay, you're good at something else.
Right.
The wonderful thing about our world and, especially the States and the opportunities we have is not everything is for everybody. Yeah. Not everybody's going to go to college, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not, and it's okay. And that's why I say the mental health part of, you know what, if my kid doesn't come home with straight A's, but she's well balanced and she's happy and she's learning, I'm happy. Like, that's good.
Yeah.
Is she going to get into Harvard? No. Do I think she would have gotten into Harvard anyway? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like that's not, for me, like I look back and, I got into my safety school for undergrad. Guess what? I'm still a lawyer owning a law firm and I was on law review. It doesn't, how much does it matter?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. No, I mean, I majored in TV production with a minor in music and minor in theater, and here I am as a social worker. Right.
Right.
Because, everyone needs to find their path. Everyone needs to find what fits for them. And sometimes it's trial and error.
Yeah.
So, I think it's figuring out what works for each kid and accepting, not everyone is college bound. School does not work the way that most people learn, but you need to figure out how to do school to be successful.
Right. Right. Unless you get the option of doing one of the other options, but that's not always realistic, and it's, I mean, it's learn how to school. I like that phrase, like, and that's what it is. The challenge I know is with our kids, that have to mask to learn how to do school.
Yeah. Yes. And it's figuring out how to deal with that, post-school meltdown with a lot of kids, and just giving kids time to let go and be and have downtime and relax and decompress, and teaching strategies how to regulate their nervous system.
Yeah. I am so against homework. I'm the worst. I don't make my kids do homework. Like sometimes yes, but they just spent 6 hours in a classroom and learning and stuff. After work, I don't want to work anymore. I mean, I do because I have to, but
right.
Like to make them do homework, I have such a hard time with it. And it's just, they need to be able to be with the family. They need to, cook dinner with me. I just, did my Instagram quote. The girls and I had so much fun cooking dinner together. They need to be able to go outside and play with their friends and the math will come. Well, they're both good at math, so that's not an issue. But like doing, a reading assignment. Well, guess what? They're reading the recipe, and we're doing the math by like figuring out. Well, wait, we're going to cut that recipe in half. So what is that going to look like? And what are the ratios and stuff and life stuff?
Yeah. Real world education.
Right. And I know that's such a hot topic with so many people because parents are brought up of like, you have homework, you have to do your homework. It's part of your grade. You have to do your homework. But why? I mean, yes and no. And it's interesting though, because there's definitely what I've seen, at least in the counties and with school systems, there's definitely two different schools of thought about homework.
Oh, yeah.
Although I would say the majority of the school systems, when I have the client saying we spend 2 hours a night doing the homework, the teachers are like, absolutely not.
Right.
Spend 20 minutes. That's it. The homework is not supposed to be an all night thing. Spend the 20 minutes. And if it doesn't work, then that's it. Whatever they did in that 20 minutes is enough.
Right. And I also think it comes down to how the parents interact with kids when they're doing homework. If it's a fight for 2 hours to like sit here, do your homework, you have to do it, get it done, and it's causing more tension in the family, that's not worth it. It's get done what you can, just try, put some effort in, and be done.
Right.
But there's no need to breathe over your kids, breathe down their necks to get the work done. It's not helping anyone.
Right. And that's like, I know for me, it's been a big mind shift of, parenting and, gone is the era of like how I grew up of like, you do what I say because I'm the mom. You know what I mean? Like I'm the parent and you do what I say, or, you're getting spanked or you're getting sent to your room without dinner or whatever the punish, and, which is fine parenting. I used to tell my dad all the time, did he screw up when we were growing up? Yeah, he did. But he did the best he could with what he knew. And that's okay. I'm good with that. I don't blame him for, and that's like, as parents, like, that's what we have to do. Like, right. Is get enough knowledge and do the best we can with what we know. Do we know where a kid's going to end up? No. But you know what, if our kid is meant to go one way or a different way, like it's okay, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I see a lot of that. And when our kids are born, from the moment of conception, like they are in our bellies, we have an idea of what they're going to be like as adults. And when it doesn't match that picture, it can be really hard.
Yeah.
And there can be a grieving process there. If you think, my kid's going to be an astronaut and they can't do math, you've got to be able to reconcile those differences and accept who your kid is, see their strengths, see what works for them, see what doesn't, and just help them to grow and be the best person that they can be.
Right. Like let go of our dreams for the child and let them find that, nurture their dreams, right? Let them find their dreams and help them, support them in that.
Right.
It's like growing up for me, it wasn't, are you going to college? It's which college were you going to?
Oh, yeah.
That was expected, it was just not an option.
Yeah. Because you grew up in Montgomery County. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, in the DMV area.
It's expected.
Right. And
it's
that's
expected.
Right. And going back to this, everybody has my kids on honor roll, and like in the DMV area, there's so much pressure.
So much pressure. And how many AP classes are you in this year? As a freshman. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I remember talking to a friend of mine who, I'm an older parent, so most of my friends' kids are a lot older, and her saying that, she doesn't know if she would do it the same way again, because like her kid got a B and was like, I'm never going to get into a good college, because he went to one of the W schools that there was so much high pressure of like, your weighted GPA is a 4.6 and, and you have all this other stuff. And, does it matter? Maybe, but depending on where your child wants to go and what you know what I mean? Like you don't have to have college and grades to be successful.
Right. And, the other thing I tell a lot of my clients is nobody's going to know where you went to college, what your GPA was, any of these things, unless you tell them. They're not going to know.
Right. It doesn't matter.
Not. Right.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like, yes, if you want to go into, nuclear physics or whatever, you go to a college that has nuclear, or even psychology or, teaching or whatever it is, you go to that type of school. But again, like there's nothing wrong with changing your path. I mean, you did it too. Totally changed careers, right? I was a teacher.
Did. Yeah. I worked in Los Angeles in production for a few years after college. And I like to say I sold my soul in LA and I wanted it back. And I took night classes at UCLA in psych and, then applied to master's programs because I just thought I wanted to be a producer, director, writer, all of those things, and realized it was not a good fit for me, but I didn't know until I actually did it.
Right. That's the thing, is you don't know. It was the same as me. Like I went into teaching, I got into my safety school. I went into teaching because I didn't think I was smart enough for law school, and I know but it was the way I grew up. And that was, cause I wasn't great at math and I couldn't spell and my grammar wasn't great either. And, and so in school boxes, I wasn't smart,
It's true.
And that's why, I say all the time, like my child's mental health is more important. Like, if she gets, she comes home and like, oh my God, I got to see. I'm like, okay, did you try? Did you learn something? Yeah. Great.
Right. And so much of outcome in life is more like grit and stick-to-itiveness and like not giving up and figuring out this is what I want to do and working toward your goals. Keep pushing through.
The joke in law school. The joke in law school, I think it was the A students become judges, the B students are prosecutors or public defenders, and the C students are the ones that make all the money. Because it was like, that was a big joke because it was kind of like where, Which makes sense because like if you're all academic, sometimes you don't learn all that other stuff that you need
Right.
to learn
Right.
of what's
Yeah.
important.
Yes.
You know, the
Knowing how to,
socialization.
knowing how to interact with people, knowing how to work with your strengths, those are important things.
So when somebody comes into you, do they, I mean, like, is it, do they come in as individuals? They come in as couples? They come in as families? Or is it kind of whatever they think they need, they come in and figure it out?
So a lot of times, it's mostly individuals or mostly, teenagers. I get a lot of teenagers. And then I encourage the parents to seek their own individual therapy or couples therapy or family therapy based on what I'm seeing. It's hard raising a teenager.
I'm not looking forward to it.
It's hard raising a teenager. And, as moms, I think we often, become martyrs and just give up everything to focus on our kids. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not as good parents. Like, that's just what it comes down to. If we're miserable, it's going to reflect on the household.
Yeah.
Kids sense what's going on with us. They're smart. They pick up on things. So if we're not taking care of us, it's harder for us to take care of everyone else.
Right.
And then we're feeling resentful, neglected, all of the horrible, terrible things. So most of the time I end up, I start seeing a teenager and I'll, encourage some family sessions, things like that. But I have 5 associates on my team and everybody does something a little bit different. So, I might send them to one of my associates for individual therapy or couples therapy, family therapy, or see them myself. But I also encourage in sessions, little family sessions, if there's something going on with the teenager and they are hesitant to talk to their parents about it, I'll bring in the parents and help support them in expressing their needs to their parents.
Right, which is important also.
Yeah.
It's all like the communication. I know, like I say it all the time, I know, and everybody family, I know we have some really bad communication patterns at our household. Who doesn't? It's,
We repeat
we all
what
have.
we learned.
Right, right. Until we learn how to break that cycle,
Right.
And it's so, but I love that you say, take care of yourself. Because that's the other thing. It's like, if we're forcing our children to go to therapy, but we're not in our own therapy, what are they seeing?
Right.
Like, why do I have to go to therapy and not
Exactly.
you? What's wrong with me?
Exactly.
And looking at that, where it's like, hey, mommy goes to therapy too. Like, it's just a great place to help work on yourself so we can be the better us,
Right.
better me.
Right. Or, even worse, I don't understand why my parents are still together. They're miserable, and they're not in couples therapy.
Right. Exactly. And that's the other thing I'm assuming, like, with how to communicate. It's hard, I know, and like how to communicate with kids on their level. Like, it's hard when there's stressors at home and financially something's going on, or there's a death, or there's a loss, or whatever that is. The kids sense it and know it.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you're talking in another room, and not, they know something's going on, and there's got to be that, communication of how to explain it to them, and that they know, because if not, it's just they just know there's tension there and they're going to act out because of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then that just devolves everything. I mean, the kids are acting out, they're stressed. It causes more stress and tension. I like to see a family, of course I don't have one, like, oh wait, I do. I like to see a family like a rubber band. If it's like there's tension in one part of the family, like, it's going to pull on everyone else, and it affects everyone.
Right.
So, it's figuring out how to take care of you, and yes, how to communicate effectively. Hey, this is going on. Or even just sitting with the kid and saying, like, I know this happened. Is there anything you want to talk to me about this? Like, is there anything you want to say about this? And sometimes it's just sitting in silence for a little bit. You can get a lot more out of kids than if you pummel them with questions.
Right. And let them, yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's, I think if you're not sharing what's going on, at least somewhat on their level, then the kids feel the anxiety and they're reacting to the anxiety and they don't know why.
Right.
And then they're reacting and you're getting, why the heck are you acting like that? Well, the kid doesn't know why they're acting like that. You know what I mean? Like, I can't stand, there's so much pressure sometimes of schools, parents, adults asking kids why they did something.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Well, every behavior has a purpose, and I think it's important to look behind the behavior and the why, rather than just dealing with the actual behavior. It's what happened that they engaged in that behavior. Were they in fight, flight, freeze mode? Were they trying to protect themselves? Were they trying to get out of something? Were they trying to get into something? Why?
Right. And the kid won't know why.
No.
You have to help them figure it out.
Our job.
Yeah. And it's like, I know there are times like when my daughter has had enough and she hits that wall and she's just cussing us all out. It has nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing to do with me. And I know that. And it's like, let her do her thing and then stomp off and goes and regulates herself and comes back and is the sweetest kid again, like it's okay. Cause I'd rather her do it to me than do it at school or do it to the wrong people out on the street or, you know what I mean? And it's kind of giving her that safe space of like, this is not appropriate, but if you need this, this is where and how it's appropriate to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's also teaching kids to identify when they start to get there, like when they're going up the mountain and they're starting to get agitated, what can they do sort of lower down to bring them down even more and calm themselves so that they don't hit red alarm territory if you can get there. If you can get them the tools and the skills to just decompress and not get to the red zone,
Yeah.
That's
and it's interesting. Yeah, I know. Like one of the techniques that one of my daughter's therapists is doing is like we have her coping strategies, and we're supposed to practice them 5 minutes a day while she's regulated.
Yes,
because and that's something I don't know how much, and I'm just realizing, I don't know if I have that written on IEPs, but I don't know how much, everybody's like, oh, give them the coping strategy list. So when they become dysregulated, they can pick a strategy. But when you're dysregulated, you're not thinking, right?
No,
it's
your frontal lobe goes offline. You have no executive functioning skills when you're dysregulated. It's gone. So the first thing you need to do is figure out how to get your frontal lobe back online and how to calm yourself and get in a zone where you can actually access those strategies. And yes, if you can practice them and get them to be second nature when someone is calm, when someone is regulated, then it is a lot easier to access it in that moment.
Right. Because brain memory, right? Or body memory.
Yeah, it is.
That makes sense. Yeah. So when you work with kids on teaching them to advocate for themselves, I'm assuming you're a big advocate for that kids should know what's on their IEPs, right?
Yes. And none of them do.
Right. And at any age, right? Even the younger kids?
Yeah, absolutely. I always ask for copies of IEPs. I always sit with the kid and read them their accommodations. And I have them I ask them, what does this mean to you? How do you think that works? How do you think you ask a teacher? I do that with their testing too. A lot of times when kids get tested, they know what their diagnosis is, but they don't know what that means. Or they know, if someone says, well, you have slow processing speed, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And a lot of times when they go and they get tested and then it's the, hour-long meeting with the tester kind of explaining everything, there isn't that detailed, breaking it down into pieces. They just immediately hear something's wrong with me and that's it. And then they're gone. So it's talking through with them, what are your strengths? What are your challenges? And with an IEP or a 504, looking at all those different accommodations and figuring out, okay, how does this actually work? What does this actually mean? And if they don't understand or they don't know, or if I'm not sure, okay, well, go into your counselor. Let's write this list. You go into your counselor, and I want you to talk through all these things with them and figure out, or, if a teacher says, well, I can't do it that way, that's a problem, and making sure, for my high schoolers, it's emailing the teacher and CCing the counselor and saying, wait a second, this is what I need.
Right. And it prepares them for college, right? Because I know that's been a big thing. I did a presentation for college disability offices, and a big thing is that the parents will come into the college campus and go to the disability office and be like, here's my child's IEP, you need to implement it. And the disability office is like, okay, 1, no, we don't. 2, we can't talk to you, your child's 18, right? And they, now, yes, the child can allow parents to talk to them also, but it's like, they're the ones that are going to have to do it. They have to, this is my disability. This is what I need. This is why I need it, and make those arguments. Yes, parents can support, but the kids need to do it on college campuses.
Oh, yeah.
And then when they get jobs, at that point, they're not afraid of asking for these things because it's second nature to them.
Right. And it's learning how to ask appropriately and not, demand, so that, it's, I need this. It's asking appropriately for what you need and what you're allowed to have, and figuring out, one thing's going to work better in one class than another class, and figuring out, based on implementing those things, what works. And also with a lot of the kids I work with, it's fear of standing out, looking different, not wanting people to know that they have accommodations, or not wanting people to, why do they get extended time? I don't understand, or not wanting to ask to take a test in their own room, and just accepting, hey, if this is what works for you, if you're allowed to have this, why not use it?
Right.
Because a lot of times they're scared to use the accommodations.
Yeah. Because they don't want to be teased or stand out, or, and there's also, I've seen teachers be like, fine, you don't need it really, but you'll get your extra time, and just be obnoxious about it,
Right.
What was that? I'm trying to remember a movie, but I don't remember. There was some movie that it was like, and then the teacher made a big deal, but like it was Leo. It was Leo. And the teacher's like, everybody has this time except for so-and-so, because they have an extra 2 minutes because of their ADHD, and announcing it to everyone. And she just did embarrassed.
Yeah.
And it's, there's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing, what, my brain works differently, and this is what my brain needs to even the playing field. I'm not getting a leg up on you guys. I'm just even,
Right.
So what, I'm just noticing the time. I'm like, oh, wow. I could talk to you all day. Right. So easy. So if people are thinking, okay, you know what, I'm done. It's the time. We need help. What's the best way to reach you?
Me personally?
Yeah. Or PRN, what's your process? How should they?
So our website is prncounseling.com. It is my initials, but it's also happens to be the Latin PRN. So that worked out. And so prncounseling.com is our website. Email is info@prncounseling.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. You can follow us for mental health guidance. But I'd say, if you get the inclination to reach out to a therapist, do it now.
Right.
Don't wait. Don't question it. Don't hem and haw. Just do it.
Yeah.
Because there can be a lot of, I'll do it later, kicking the can down the road. Don't wait.
Yeah. Because that's when the self-esteem starts, or the bad habits become, habits rather than, the unhealthy relationships and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I know we're going to have all of the links in the show notes below.
Wonderful.
But thank you, Pam. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing
Yeah.
all of your wisdom with our audience.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Frances Schefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Frances through schefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.